Hello everyone. I'm so sorry for my technical difficulty. Yes. Again, so I'm Mel from 1Export. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. So I restarted my internet. I'm really sorry. So yeah. Okay, game. So I'm Mel from 1Export. I'm from Ideaspace Batch 6. So we joined Ideaspace in 2018. And just a brief background. Basically, this presentation is in terms of how we started. So it's going to be as casual and informal as much as possible. um, I would I am very open to questions and anything at this point. I just want you to know that 2 years ago I was in your position. I was at the point in 2018 we were 2 years registered. We were 1 year full time. So I left my corporate job in April 2017. In 2018, we didn't know where to go, what the business was going to be. Yes, we had some level of traction. We were making some money to pay us a salary, but we really didn't know what the business was going to be at this point. And we were actually at a point where will we be will we be um, will we be closing down? Will we will we make it through the next pay cut and all of these questions? So whatever you guys are feeling, I just want you to know that we were once in your position. And of course we are very glad to be a part of the Idea Space family. It's one of the blessings that we've really had, and I believe one of the things that has helped us move forward. So there, I'm Mel. So yan na lang yung picture ko para and this is the story of my startup journey with 1Export. Okay, sige. So Alex, next slide. Sorry, so si Alex na yung nagmamanage ng slide ko. Okay, so 1Export started. I was an MBA student at the Asian Institute of Management, no. And I took my MBA basically because I left a 7-year toxic relationship. So whatever that was, I said, I want something better for myself. And I also left a job that was no longer making me grow. No? So what triggered this whole existential journey was there was a there was a billboard of Megan Young who just won Miss World in 2013 or 2015. It was a Security Bank billboard, and I remember it saying, "We all deserve better." Or it was something that I would pass by in EDSA going to work every day, and I told myself that this year, if things were no longer making me happy, making me grow or serving me, then I was going to leave that, right? So I left the job that was no longer serving me, and I left the relationship that was no longer making me happy, and I took my MBA. And in MBA, I told myself I want to make a startup. So I didn't know what that was yet. But my background before this was in the exporting industry. So the fun fact is we applied for the 2018 Ideaspace um, like batch, no? But we actually applied 1Export back in 2016, right? And back then, I just told myself I didn't want to go back to corporate anymore. And my friends and I were thinking, let's think of an idea that will allow us to become entrepreneurs, right? And maybe join Idea Space, right? So we thought about making a one-stop exporting platform because I was in the exporting industry. And during my time with um, Mondenissen. I used to work for Mondenissen where I sold noodles and biscuits to Asia, Europe, and the US. Um, we when I left for my MBA, there were still a lot of people that were asking me to consult for um, um, either exporting or how do they get these things to become more compliant or about processing of documents. So we said, there might be something here, no? So the slide here actually shows like one of the slides from my thesis, where back then we really wanted to be an online platform for processing, enabling MSMEs to go global, right? So whatever that, no? So it was an idea, and we started it. It was really like an idea. We pitched it to Ideaspace. We pitched it to a lot of business competitions, and this eventually became my thesis, no? Um, sige, Alex, next slide. Sorry. Okay, so I was taking MBA classes at the Asian Institute of Management, and my problem was when you take your MBA, it's mostly driven for the corporate setting. No? So you talk about valuation, you talk about changing organizations and all of these things, no? But nothing about startup, right? So for me to actually get my first round of like startup learning, I actually went through YouTube via the Y Combinator lessons, no? So I really went through like how to start a startup. That was I went through every single uh like YouTube video, and then really just understanding what it is, no? Because I said before, I think 2015 when I was about to graduate, and I said we had this idea. I said I want to be able to pursue this because I really don't want to do corporate forever, no. So that was initially how we started, and then next slide, sorry. And then we joined. Well, when we joined a couple of competitions, our first one was Maybank FinTech. um, One of the problems that we had was we needed to form a tech team, right? Kasi parang, yes, we had a good idea. The business model seemed a little clear, but we didn't have any idea in terms of like building the team, no? So this was my first team. This was fresh out of startup weekend. Also, like ironically, it was also sponsored by Ideaspace actually. It was Goldie. So she used to be the former um, person in charge of programs. She was there in that weekend, and we won parang People's Choice Award. No? So we didn't win any of the startup validation, but People's Choice Award because we got a lot of likes in Facebook. And this was basically my first team. No? So the one to the right most was actually Maita. She was one of my best friends, and she helped me think of the idea. But yeah, roughly like yeah, that's really the first team. And next slide. So yeah, but of course we were working on the startup weekend team was working on 1Export every weekend after that startup weekend. And but it's really like the four of us, no? So see, this is Sophia, Clive, Kevin, and then me. So um Sophia, Clive, and Kevin were actually tech guys. And ideally you would have thought that by having tech guys on board, you would have had a tech product back in 2016, but we really didn't, no. And uh, but what we did, sorry, next slide. What we did was we kept joining competitions, no. I think because of the frustration that we didn't win in startup weekend, or we just got People's Choice Award, we had something to prove na parang we wanted to prove that we're a legit startup, no. So we joined different types of competitions. Maybank FinTech Challenge, we won in startup weekend. We also joined Mobile Challenge Asia Pacific, so we won in the Philippine round. Then we won in the Asia Pacific round, so we went to Hawaii and we represented Asia, and then we won again in um, Spain. No? So I was with Sophia and Clive, but we were actually a team of 4 back then. And then the other guys there are the guys from Asia, the other people that won. No? But we were building a false sense of confidence and validation by just joining all of these startup competitions. And yes, we were winning, but we weren't really building a startup. No, so when we got back, specifically from this competition was actually from yeah, sorry, next slide, sorry. Yeah, so actually, like, if you look at this, no, we kept winning, and these are some of the slides from our parang competition days, no. So parang we had like a like this was the solution to our problem, this was the business model, these were the benefits, this was the quote unquote tech, but honestly we didn't have a tech back then, and we didn't even have anything to verify it with, no. So these were, we kept winning and winning, and then eventually, after all of these wins will feel empty if you actually don't have anything, no. So after this was the particular slides that I got from our Spain, the last competition we joined before we actually said we were going to build a startup. This was slides from our Spain trip, our Spain competition, where we became parang top 10 startups in yung mobile challenge, global mobile challenge. And then after that, we came back to our customers selling them the tech. So let's go to the next slide, Alex. Sorry. So one of our first customers, when we were trying to sell to him the tech, no, this was, I remember this very vividly. Yeah, he actually told us, like, it's nice, the tech's nice, but we don't need that. We need you to help solve our exporting problems. And these are our problems, right? If you want us to pay you, we're not going to pay for this tech. We're going to pay you because you actually solve our problems, right? And so that was a very I remember this very clearly because it was like a slap in the face, where it was like we really had to get back to reality, right? Like competitions and all of these frills were not enough to validate, the real difference that we wanted to really do, no. And the only way to do that was to actually become a be able to solve actual problems, right? So next slide. So what happened really was, after realizing that, I said, before my last day in corporate, my co-founder and I, before this realization, I believe that realization came mga parang September of 2016, no. I registered the company in August of 2016 because I got pissed off with my boss in corporate, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna build a company, whatever. I was very naive then, and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna build a company and I'm gonna build my own culture, and I'm gonna make a difference, and I'm gonna leave corporate and all of these things. No, and my co-founder and I were planning that. Clive was planning that with me, and he said, let's just give this a try. Let's see if this is going to work, right? And since we got that feedback na, if you want us to pay you, you have to solve our problem. So we spent the year of 2017 just solving problems. So initially, what did we become? No, no, Clive was not my AM classmate. I didn't have co-founders from AM. Clive was somebody I met from Startup Weekend. So initially, what we became was I came from a consulting firm. So Solidians was actually a consulting firm. And initially, what we became an export consulting company. So next slide, Alex. Yeah. So 2017 was really the year where we were trying to find ourselves. We were calling ourselves a startup, but we really didn't have any tech at any point. No. So we said we were just gonna put ourselves out there, and if people asked us what we did, we said, oh, we can help you with your documents. What are your export problems? We can help solve that problem, whatever it was. But honestly, we didn't know what problem we were solving. We just wanted to understand what the problems were of our clients. So it could range from documentation or labeling and whatnot. And we were going to help you solve that problem, whatever it was, even if we didn't have expertise in that particular field. Because I knew how to export noodles and biscuits, but people were coming to us with soy sauce or fruit chips. I've never had experience in those. And so what we would do is we're just going to research and then maybe come up with like, oh, so this is what we did, or this is how we solved your problem, or this is how we processed your documentation, and all of these things, right? Making it seem like a very seamless transaction, but really it was just Viber messages to clients every day saying the status of your document is here, or this is where it's at, or we sent samples to our client abroad. So stuff like that. It was just really sending it back and forth, and maybe trying to find a solution. And it even came to a point where in 2017 we didn't have money. DTI said, well, why don't you make the export guidebook for DTI? And I was like, okay, if we're gonna make the export guidebook, and I'm going to say this in um in confidence. I hope you guys don't say things to DTI. But DTI said, like, why don't you make our export guidebook? And I said, I need to fund the company for about 6 months. How much will it take for me to fund the company? I needed 450,000 pesos. DTI, will you give me 450,000 pesos to make your export guidebook? I will make your export guidebook at 450,000 pesos. And they did, right? But they were like really hard, right? Like I didn't have a Christmas break that time. I didn't spend New Year with my family. I was just working to make that export guidebook, and they gave us and they gave us 450,000 pesos to last for another year. So we were really like in 2017 uh we were really like an export consulting company. Next slide, Alex. Okay. Um Yes. So yes, in 2018 we decided to join Ideaspace 2018. No? So and the reason for this was because after being a consulting company for the longest time, we really didn't know where to go. No, Clive was a very tech guy from Voyager who I met in Startup Weekend, and he was like, what product am I going to build, right? Like I'm wasting my career and we're not even building a tech product. So we were like, okay, let's join Ideaspace and let's see where this brings us, right? And so during the boot camp, we realized very sadly, like we were not a tech company. We were just a consulting company, and we didn't know, or we weren't a very very scalable company, right? So one of the questions I remember during this time in your place 2 years ago was to rethink our business model and to ask the questions back to our customers again. So next slide. So yeah, we were one of the top 6 Ideaspace startups. But basically, what happened was when we initially got that grant, we were able to hire our first 3 interns. So our first 3 interns are here. So see Ryan, that's Dana and Patrick. And basically, we wanted to be able to understand, you know, what can we do with the money, or like, we got interns at first because we said we wanted to see if we could actually lead a company, right? We didn't want to hire somebody off the bat. We weren't hiring anybody, let's see if we can lead the company. And I guess I have to say, at this point, like it was a very hard struggle, because at this point, Clive was actually having parang problems with his family, that a 15,000 peso salary was not enough to sustain him. And so he started to become very toxic in the process, where eventually we just decided, you know, um, maybe you should take a step back or take other jobs, and then I'll run the startup. But ideally, you still have to run the tech, no? Maybe we can go through the slides, Alex. Sorry. So this was initially what we had in mind. Like this is the tech that we had in mind. So sorry. Just go. Sige, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Then this is what we actually presented to Ideaspace. Like very simple. We wanted to show this. Take note at this time, guys, that these were just screens. So basically, um, these were just Photoshop screens. These didn't have code. We didn't have anything at this point. But basically, this was like basic. This was what we wanted to happen eventually, you know. And then next slide, Alex. Okay, so this is where the slide I wanted to talk about. Back in January, we had 6 customers. And these were really most of our consulting clients, right? So basically, like, we were like, whatever you want us to do, we will do it. You pay us 25,000 pesos per month or 25,000 pesos every month that you make us do something. In March, when we joined the Ideaspace startup, where we started questioning ourselves in terms of like, okay, what are the other things that we can offer? From 6, we had 13 customers. And then um, in June, after the Ideaspace bootcamp, where we started to rethink our model, we didn't change the model completely, no, but we tried to make it scalable. So the consulting aspect of the business, even if it was pretty um, profitable, what happened was we said we're not gonna do consulting anymore. We're just going to charge you on every time you ask us to do something. So if you wanted to process documents, we charge you a documentation service fee and a document, ano. Or we also did like a sales pivot where, okay, you're not going to pay us a consulting fee anymore, but if we sold your products, we get a commission. So we changed that model, and which was really the reason why from March to June, we actually doubled the number of customers that we had. So, but at this time, I just want you to understand, at this point, actually, we still didn't have the tech. And so by the end of the Ideaspace journey, where we became, I think we were at 60 customers and we sold our first shipment to Qatar. I started to question my co-founder, si Clive, like, you know, I delivered my end of the bargain as the business person in this startup, but where's the tech, diba? And so there were a lot of reasons and questions. And so my first hire, si Marco, who joined me when we were very, very new, you know, we decided, why don't we hire somebody and maybe why don't we hire somebody and maybe test if we can get this done, no? So uh yeah so yeah um Alex, can you go to the next slide? um yeah, so this was our year with Ideaspace. Actually, at this point in time, I'll be honest, like, we grew really fast after Ideaspace. This is the progress we initially showed to Ideaspace when we were back in 2018, but we hit the 1 million target, I think, or 1 million per month target, I think, in May of 2018. So we were already making 1 million per month every month since May of 2019 pala, sorry, 2019. The year after Ideaspace, we started hitting 1 million per month. And so, what happened was, in 2019, I decided ultimately to let Clive go. No? So parang what happened was, I hired the junior developer to make a landing page. I asked Clive to make a landing page, and I uh, eventually that landing page was never finished, but the junior developer finished the landing page in 3 days. And so I went back to Clive and said, you know, what are you doing? Like, you know, I mean, I'm here running the startup. You have a lot of shares. Um, I understand, like, you're a very values driven guy and you don't really want the shares. But the point is, you're technically vice president of the company. This could be a big thing, right? What are you doing? I'm delivering my end of the bargain. And so ultimately, I believe obviously wala akong pictures nito, no? But then um, this happened when he actually asked me, you only have to choose one code kasi the junior developer and him, they were completely different in terms of code. And he said, you only have to choose one code. And I ultimately chose the code of the junior developer because I said, well, you're not here, you're not present, you don't even know the problems that we're solving, and it's not like you're not in the group chats and all of these things, right? You've never had initiative and all of these things. And so yeah, he ultimately decided to go, but we did have a conversation after that, and to just really sit things through. He actually told me, during the time that he was very toxic about a lot of the things, um, it was because he was having family problems. We actually had a call where it was like, okay, Clive, either you give the shares, or either I buy the shares from you at the market value during that time, or or you give it up completely, right? And so he actually gave that call, and I said, well, you have to give it up because technically we have this founders agreement where it was like you had to give 5 years of your life to the business because it'll take 5 years for the business to be completely okay. He did 1 year cliff, meaning he wasn't really entitled to shares, but I was actually willing to pay for him for his time at that point. But then kasi he's also the reason why I was attracted to becoming his co-founder at the very beginning was I knew he had values. And so because he knew he didn't have any contribution to the growth of 1Export later on, he ultimately said, you know what, you should have all the shares. You can give it to other people. And that time that, I lost, as your co-founder, parang it was because I learned something naman from it and I got a better job because of it that's now paying me. So, I mean, I'm lucky as a co-founder in that way because, I've had that hard talk with Clive and of course all of the other founders I've had before that. But Clive was particularly very difficult because, he was the reason why I went full time. So, in fact, he gave his resignation letter to Voyager. Darth is one of the tech mentors here. Darth was his boss. He gave his resignation letter in Halloween. So Darth actually thought the resignation letter was a joke. He left December 31. So he started 1Export first, right? He started with 1Export first. And because he went full time, by Jan 3, I had to tell my boss, even if this was on a call, I'm letting you know that I'm resigning. And so yeah, but because I also let him go, because he decided to ultimately not be co-founder. The benefit naman of that was we were able to achieve our year 3 projected income, which is 1 million a month by 2019. So in 2019, our average sales were at 25,000 US dollars per month. So ayun. Okay, tara. Sige, next slides na lang. So let's go through na lang my team photos. So these are my team photos. So obviously this is completely different from the co-founders that I've had. Sige, next slide lang. Ano? Ayun. Sige. Yan. Okay. And next slide, Alex. Ayan. So this is the new team now. But I want to understand, I want you to let you know parang sort of where we really are now, no? This was yung 25,000 US dollars monthly recurring revenue is actually our 2019. In 2020, we're actually expected to do 4 times of that this year. And I'll explain why. We ultimately when we were doing when we were doing our parang review in terms of the impact or the solution that we're actually able to give, we realized that we're not just solving problems, but we're actually able to reduce the time and cost to export by at least 70%. We have 300 plus 350 companies right now onboarded with us. We are able to export to US, Qatar, Australia, Singapore. But with this pandemic, we actually added countries like Taiwan, Kuwait, Hong Kong, and Switzerland. So all of this happened without us having to travel. And then for every SME, we're able to give 10,000 US dollars worth of export sale. No, so this is where we are now. Sorry, Alex, next slide. We launched our beta, our tech platform, in November of 2019. So uh, of course, this is sorry, this was a slide from us.
Yes, we are here.
We are here. Wait a minute.
Last message, last message.
Okay.
Are you okay? Hello? Okay. And so, ayun. Yeah, basically, so yeah, so we've done that, but also we actually are at a point where during the coronavirus pandemic, we became more intentional, and we really had to think through, like, where do we want to be after this pandemic? We don't just want to survive, we want to make impact after this pandemic. So this is the model where we use. Of course, we want to be able to touch different areas in terms of sales, distribution, financing, marketing, logistics, and compliance. So we're actually launching products in 2020 for all of these things. But essentially, we'd like to make impact in terms of employment, become more sustainable in terms of our operations, meaning by this year, we want to be able to hit positive EBITDA. We want to reach more markets. So actually, before the pandemic, we've actually been onboarding suppliers in Indonesia as well. And we want to be able to help in terms of economic recovery. So it's very critical to become a very intentional startup. I have to say that at this point, 2 years ago, I'll tell you this, I thought that we were going to close down. When we joined the Ideaspace bootcamp, we thought we were going to close down. So many things happened where we've had return shipments, right? We've had clients who, were trying to take advantage of us and all of these things. In so many ways, there were days where it was like, I knew we only had 20,000 pesos in our corporate bank account, and I had to make sure that we had money the next day. So in so many ways, we could have closed down, but we always go back to where we want to be and what we want to do, what kind of impact do we want to make, particularly during COVID-19. After President Duterte gave his speech in terms of, okay, you guys can give your 13th months already, or you guys can furlough employees and all of that. It was a very intentional discussion where we said, we're not going to furlough any employees. We're going to grow, right? It's going to be hard, but we're going to push. We had like 3 months worth of runway at that point. We said, we're going to use this 3 months to grow, because at least we can say we've tried. And at that point, I want to say that it was a very the risk that we took 2 months ago, where we said, we're not going to furlough, we're going to grow, we're going to do all of these things, we're going to make the tech part a critical part of the business. We're going to scale our financing aspect. We're going to sell to more markets and all of these things. It's proven very effective, because now, as I've mentioned, we are actually expanding markets during the coronavirus. We are actually also doing a new initiative where we're going to be supplying PPEs to the United States, so that we can support some of the fashion businesses in the Philippines that were heavily affected. And we'll be using some of those profits to buy ventilators for hospitals in the Philippines that don't have access to those things. So yeah, that's where we are right now. But of course, like, really, I would not really have been able to do this had it not been for the team, no? And that whole thing was very hard. that also was very challenging. No, Miss Diane can vouch for that, and all of the staff in Ideaspace can vouch for that, because our 2018 office was the Ideaspace office. So we were shouting at, we were shouting at clients who were trying to take advantage of us. We were not sleeping at all. But at this point, no, parang we were very, it was very, very, it was a risk worth taking. So I wanted to maybe ask where you are. I just want you to know that, again, 2 years ago, I was where you are. We did not know where we were going. We did not know what kind of business we wanted to be. And that's okay. It's all a part of the journey. And whatever it is, no, it will be worth it. No? So this is what, like, I'm not sure for the Filipinos here, in our team, we always say, like, kapit lang, laban lang, like, just fight and like stick through, or, pull through. So pull through and, fight is normally what we would tell our team. So every time, no, even if like we only have 10,000 in our bank account, for example, or, so, and everybody is able to pull through. So yeah, I'm very, very open to questions. I'm sorry for my technical difficulty, and I guess that's it. Like, wala na akong slides, Alex, diba? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Mel. I am Alvin from Dropdown. So we're an e-commerce company. So
Yes. Hi.
hi. So I was thinking that some of your clients might actually be what we're looking for in suppliers as well, because you support clients who want to export overseas, right? And we
Yeah.
want to
Of course.
find suppliers to supply our e-commerce business here locally in the Philippines.
Sure. Okay.
So how can we reach out to you
Sure.
in the
I
future?
can give you my email or something. We can work
All right.
together. I know. We
All right.
can help you. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right.
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Hi, Miss Mel. Hi.
Hello.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you. I think your business is really booming now.
Thank you. Yes, you
Yeah.
work really hard. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I think what intrigued me is that actually our startup, MedHive, is a B2B platform. What we do is we connect suppliers of medical supplies to hospitals in small, medium hospitals outside Metro Manila.
Yes.
So actually, well, yeah, recently because of the COVID crisis, I guess the need for that type of platform more became a bit more popular. But actually, the difficulty I had was how did you eventually push technology to traditional clients? Because the doctors, just to be frank, most doctors, if the traditional way works, like the traditional procurement way works, they just stick with it. There's a very small number of doctors that would really try to adapt to something new.
You
So
know,
yeah,
I'll say this, like maybe before that was the case, but now with COVID, it's actually very it's actually like people are starting to adapt just because they have no choice.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you can reach back to your doctors, because now, people don't want to see each other in the clinics right
mhm,
now, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, even for our clients that used to be very traditional, like they said they were never going to use the tech. Now, now they're on board. Well, the other way we did it was to understand, like for us at least, no, to understand the business dynamic. No? So, at least for us, where it was B2B, initially it was all about businesses that were handled by the first generation employees. But now, the businesses are now being handled by the second generation employees, or the millennials that sort of know the tech. So initially, when we were not getting signups from our older corporate companies, we were actually encouraging the second generation millennials to join. So maybe it's a choice of like gap generation as well, right? And so we, as much as possible, try to adapt to that. No? So for example, for our first generation, what we do is we work with we work with like Viber, for example. So tech that they're used to, and then we just find a way to be able to automate that.
Oh yeah, actually, same experience with us. They're really the younger doctors are the ones who listen to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have another question. If it's okay.
Yeah.
Actually, this one is more of the process, more of the operations. But how did you create a process, based on traditional practices that still fit in with the tech vision? Because, well, procurement is a really, it's a really tough. It's a really what you call
Yeah.
it? Yeah, a lot of red tape, a lot of question marks, a lot of approvals, and really our goal as a company is to really innovate that. We want to make it, I guess, a balance in where it's still safe. There's still a lot of checkpoints that are reliable, but what hinders really some private hospitals is that the red tape is actually causing them problems with their procurement. So how
Okay,
did you
so
like
for the process, I guess when you're a startup, you have to expect that your process flows will change every so often. No? So our process flows always change, especially now with the pandemic. Even our work from home process flows change. So I guess the first part is to really just make a draft of what you currently have, and then as you go along and find improvements, then um, that's how you iterate, no. When we started developing our tech, it was really based on what people were used to. So for example, in our tech we have a chat bot where after you upload the documents you can actually talk to like a telesales person. So when that started, it was really because we wanted to uh, try to make sure that the process was as seamless as possible, but also get them to be on board, right? So yeah, expect that the process flow will change, and then just keep changing it every time you make improvements. Yeah, we're on our third iteration. It was actually an intern that did our first process flow. No, we actually asked her, okay, we have all of these processes. Can you make a guide, like a process flow? And then it's from her process book that we've actually started to iterate. No? So yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess the integration part is the difficult, but yeah, thanks.
Yep. Questions.
I have a question.
Hi,
Hi.
Hello. I'm Michael from Tada.
Hi.
Congratulations to you and to your team. Uh,
Thank you.
just my question is, you're a global company.
Yes.
What challenges that made you stop or been affected locally? Like for example, logistics that stops you, processing internally, externally in the government or other industries.
Okay. So what kasi we do is
That
like
maybe sorry, that stops you or slows you down to
okay.
deliver globally.
Okay. So your questions are, what are the challenges that we have?
No, that affected you,
Okay.
that affected your company to
Okay. So
deliver
initially,
globally.
when we started, actually, so 1Export, right? People were thinking we were actually competing with one government agency called the Export Marketing Bureau. No, so for a while it was actually difficult to get parang insight from them or feedback from them. And so part of why we decided, sige, let's do the guidebook, because we wanted to show some credibility that we're actually not against you or we're not competing with you. We actually want to be able to help you out, right? Because you as government, you can't also do that, right? So initially what we started to do, and where we really are focused, was we started to create an ecosystem that was really just about helping others, or trying to make sure that everything works out. No? So even for our suppliers, for example, even if we weren't going to help them out, or even if they weren't going to be our customers, we were at least going to help them out in one way or another. No? So of course, the challenges that we had was, first, we were a startup, so we didn't normally have the credibility of other people in our space. Our competitors actually are other traditional traders or consolidators in the Philippines. No? So every time we would present ourselves, there was always a way for them to discredit us. No? So they were like, oh, these guys are new, they don't know what they're doing. They're not going to last that long, and all of these things. No, but I guess over time, if you really believe that you're solving a relevant problem, no, I think you shouldn't focus on the competitors. You focus on building an ecosystem. And so now there's just this way where, for example, if the government has problems with, for example, demand and supply, we're able to help them out. Or if we have problems, for example, for a shipment, they're also able to help us out. We're also able to help out other suppliers at that point, no? And then really, I guess, to be able to like combat the challenge of globalization, no? Because we do have external clients, we really built our credibility from ground up. No? So when we were presenting to buyers abroad and they were like, who's 1Export? Because we've already had an ecosystem in place, like we've had a relationship with government, or we've had relationships with other people, we started to become a more credible company, even if technically full-time, we've just been operating for 3 years. So I guess the challenges really were because we were new. And so one way to do that is to build your own credibility. That is why we also agreed to making the guidebook. Another challenge was competitors. So you really have to be able to define who you are in this space. We always tell ourselves, no, we're not going to be a trading company lang. We want to be able to help the ecosystem with whatever problem they had. And so sometimes even if our clients tell us we have a problem with financing, so we raise funds to support an order, for example. And so that's why we've been able to integrate some level of fintech in our platform. And then, was I able to answer your question?
Yeah. But what I'm, maybe another thing is, maybe your challenges or that slows you down. For example, I'll give an example. Maybe compared to other countries, you're doing globally, you're doing export business, logistics. That slows you down, that affects your company because of specific problem or in the system of the economy of the government. Just for example, processing, slow processing, for example. If you all apply, for example, for SEC, it will take you how long, for example? If you ask for permits, you ask for certificates. For other countries doing global business, they're quite more faster. So maybe that affected your company?
Well, ganito, what kasi we do is we really value our relationships. No? So for example, our front runners or frontliners who run the documents for our clients, no, what they've done is to be able to, because we're always processing documents, we already know from the onset if it's going to be wrong or right. So before we accept the document, a lot of the time that we're able to cut was because we teach the SME to process the correct document from the very beginning. When it comes to like the red tape or just being able to liaison between government agencies, we've been able to have runners that form a relationship with a front runner also, or the frontliner of like an FDA, for example, no. And so I just want to say that up to this point, we really don't make any lagay, because our belief is once we do it once, it's always going to happen again. And so what we've done is to be able to create a relationship with a frontliner, ask them questions so we don't make mistakes again. So when they process our documents, it's correct already, and it won't take that long. So yon.
When you sorry, go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, like for other countries naman, what we've done is to be able to find local partners that will help us through processing. So either to get a local freight forwarder or to get a local logistics company that will help us make the process as seamless as possible.
For example, you did you promise or you have a target deadline and you cannot deliver because of the second or third outsource or second source. What are the things that you did to make sure that you deliver?
Yun nga. So what we do is we outright track everything. No? So when the goods are going to come, right? If there were delays in the shipment and all of these things, we track that. But before the customer comes back to us with an update, like, hey, can you update us? Before they ask us questions, we've already answered that. Like we already tell you, we just want you to know that your shipment is here. We just want you to know that it's getting cleared. We just want you to know that, so all of these things, like we really do extra mile efforts to be able to make it happen.
Okay, thank you, Mel.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Mark. Yes.
Yeah. I have a question. You did mention earlier that you had to release some founders and then to hire new people. I was just wondering how you manage your shares, your company shares.
Okay. So all my founders that left, all their shares went back to the company. So I guess what you guys have to just, before you incorporate, I'm not sure if everybody's incorporated at this point, but before you incorporate, I guess a few things have to be clear. When you have founders, you have to have like a clear cliff investing schedule. Whatever that is, I don't know. You guys can decide. But you have to have a clear cliff investing schedule so that it's a very straightforward and no drama kind of setup, right? If you stay for 5 years, you get the full value of your shares. If you don't, then buy. The other thing that you guys have to decide as founders would be performance, right? Like if you are given this role, you're expected to deliver this, right? So for example, for my chief sales officer, right, the expectation is, we want to hit X number valuation by 2020, right? Or for example, we want to hit positive EBITDA by June of 2021, right? And consistent positive EBITDA by June of 2021. So for us to be able to achieve that, like certain people have certain key result areas, right? They have to be able to deliver on some areas, because if they don't, then we have to be able to question how much salary we're giving you, or the value of your shares, right? So I guess those things first have to be laid out, no? Kasi when I started talking to, for example, Clive, like, Clive, you're my CTO, but we don't have a tech company, right? Like, you're saying the reason why we joined Ideaspace is because we wanted to be a tech company, but you didn't deliver on your end, right? So what are we going to do here, right? And so I think these things have to be very clear and on the onset. My mistake was, I guess, it's now back to me, no? So, but it's very easy when I made that. It was a very easy conversation when I started working on, when I started talking to my ex-co-founders about it, because it's like, first, it was a question of commitment, right? It was like, okay, we have to go full time to be able to run this business. Can you go full time, right? Now, if the answer is no, then clearly they're not supposed to have shares, or if they have shares, they pay for those shares, or they're not supposed to get a lot of the shares. You have to understand that when you start raising funds, people will look at your share structure. And if they see people that are no longer in the company that have access to your shares, they're going to be like, why am I going to give you money? And he's not doing anything, right? So it has to be very clear, right? Yun. The hard conversations really are at the very beginning. But when you have them, like when you tell them, okay, this is how we're going to structure it. Like I tell them, even me, I have to vest. If I don't stay with a company for 5 years, then I don't get these shares, right? So it's very, but like, why do I get more shares than you? Because I'm bringing in all of these things, right? So a lot of the things, like when the current co-founders I have, they're on employee shares. So I guess you decide how much shares you have on employees, for employees. Employee shares, or at least in the company that, for 1Export, employee shares don't get diluted. So I tell my other co-founders, like, technically, I'm not paying you a lot because I'm paying you in terms of shares, right? So that's why you're jumping in the company. But I tell them eventually once this is, if we do Series D, we're roughly going to be, or Series E or whatever, should we reach that point, our shares will roughly be the same. Parang, I also din naman carry a bigger responsibility because, for example, the other shareholder that's the next shareholder that's major to me after me is my dad. Right, so I got my dad to fund the company, right? But the reason why my dad funded the company was it's also hard to get funding if you're a girl. They're gonna ask you a lot of questions like, do you have a boyfriend? When are you going to get married? Do you have kids? All of these things are taken into account in the equation, di ba? Na parang, it's really hard, no? So parang, the reason why my dad put in money was because he believed in what I was doing, but also because, there was no way I was gonna get initial funding if it wasn't for somebody that really believed in me, So, but yeah.
So how about yung mga first employees nyo?
Yeah. So
So-
I gave them shares. I gave shares to key employees. So I gave a percentage of the shares that were not going to be touched. And then it's been very clear to everybody that comes in and that gets shares na parang we're not going to keep raising, no? So that we can always keep the shares, or we can always have decision-making power. I always tell them, like, we have to be able to hit a sustainable revenue model. And so actually when COVID happened, because we were always into like, we have to always have money in bank. We always have to have sales. Our margins for every order has to be this much, minimum this much. It can't go below this minimum, right? And then our yung schedule namin for getting stuff has to be at this much. So when we had that, kasi parang when we had that kind of conversation, and then COVID-19 hit, for example, we still had money in bank. So those things saved us. So yun.
Additional question pala. How were you able to get interns?
We posted in mga Ateneo intern group, mga DLSU, ganyan. Wala, Facebook post. Tapos maganda yung graphics. So kunwari mukha kaming legit na company pero hindi talaga. Wala talaga kaming tech. Yun.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Welcome.
Hi guys. So I think we have to cut at this point since it's already 6 o'clock. Is there any last question na lang? Anyone who wants to ask a last question?
Hello.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my last question. This is Had from Quid District.
Hi,
So
Had.
you mentioned kanina, hello. By the way, congratulations, and we're really inspired sa story mo. I have
Guys,
a
by the
question.
way, I want you to know we're still bootstrapped at this point. So daddy ko lang talaga nagbigay ng pera sa akin. We're still getting money.
And
yes.
hopefully we can still be in contact even offline.
Yes, we can be Facebook friends.
Because we have
also.
so many inquiries, by the way. Anyway,
course.
my question is on the team level. Kasi syempre, when you joined Ideaspace, you already have teams, and then after the program, parang some of your team co-founders left the company. So at that point, did you have did you have something in mind na you made a wrong choice in terms of looking for the correct team member, or diba? How did you handle that
Okay.
particular situation?
Okay, I'll be honest. So I'll tell you, like, the only people I talked to during the hiring table, hindi kasi ako very anal about HR, you know. Dati kasi, because nga people didn't believe in us, or, you know, before I had this, like, complex where hindi ko pa ma-own na startup talaga kami. Dati, when people were telling us, like, oh, I want to join your company, normally I'd be like, yay, thank you, thanks for, you know, I mean, join our company, give. So my first mistake was, you know, hiring everybody that sort of like wanted to join, you know. So that was my first mistake. So initially, because we couldn't hire mga skilled or experienced people because of our budget. We had fresh grads, which is fine, but we had people that, you know, had an attitude problem and all of these things. No, so parang, I mean, I have to say, when you run the startup kasi, at least like you'll be able to figure out who you really want in your team, or what kind of attitude you want in your team, and all of these things. Like, we've had like tests where we had people na hindi college grad. Like, our runner is not a college grad, pero sobrang masipag. So, you know, parang we've had people from Ateneo, UP, Lasal, like, you know, mga people that were really spoiled, no, at the end of the spectrum. And then, you know, once you have that team together, you actually also say, who do you really want to keep, diba? So I guess, depending on, like, first, when you start, you have like a series of, this is what you want in a person, right? You wouldn't really know that until you hire them. So, kasi they could have like an attitude problem or something, right? So, I guess for the first hires, either you find a way where you can work with them on a project first, like a pro B stage, and you outright say, okay, if in 6 months you haven't achieved this and all of these things, right? We're a little more stricter with our hiring now. Not because we can afford to pay salaries. It's more like we also want a certain culture in the company na parang, you know, especially when COVID hit, you know, we told, you know, the people that want to leave, or are not motivated, you will know. And we outright tell them, like, you know, if you're not in this 100%, then, you know, you can find another job, because, you know, we want people that are in this 100%, because we see this growing to a level of, you know, to really help people, right? So we want people that want to help people, and if you're not aligned with that, then, you know, we don't want seat warmers, because especially now, I mean, I'll say this, the market might be in your favor because everybody is laying off people, and you know, you get a lot of good people that might be willing to work for a good cause. But like, I guess it's really understanding what you want and what you don't want, and then iterating that as you go along, or as you build your team. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you so much po.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Ben.
Mel, I think busog na sila doon.
Eh.
And it's getting pretty late, and I know you have
Guys.
so much work to do. And thank you, Mel, for your time. I guess let's wrap